men, they were pretty much responsible for the very first gay organizations fighting for liberation back in the 1970s. And that is Jim Toy and John Kaplan. Thank you for your work. Without them and their courage, we wouldn't be here today. So I really applaud you both and thank you so much. So Craig, hi, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jeff, I appreciate it. So we're going to give you a little taste of what you might expect from this project, a little idea of sort of the back and forth that Jeff and I have had for the last 20 years now, believe it or not. Because it was interesting, when he first picked up this microphone today, everybody went quiet, right? Sort of like the old E.F. Hutton commercials. When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. Well, when Jeff Montgomery talks, people listen. He's mattered very much in the community, so when they first asked me to be a part of this, it was a no-brainer. And just to give you an idea of what my contribution to this project is going to be for the Indiegogo campaign, I'm just going to do this because I want to do it. There's no compensation or anything like that involved here. Story is told because it is that important. And going back to that E.F. Hutton line, I'm assuming, Jeff, that it wasn't always that way. And I want to talk sort of today a little bit about this idea of being an activist and what makes a good activist. Because when you first started down this path, obviously there's a lot of anger over what happened to your boyfriend, there's a lot of frustration with police response. And it took a few years for you to sort of channel that into this. And I want to get a sense to you, a sense from you, how is a real activist made?
That's a great question. And you're right. I mean, my entry into these issues was through a personal tragedy, which I've then tried to make the most of, and tried to make some sense of. And it did take about 3 or 4 years to finally get to the point where I met a couple of like-minded people who were also frustrated, and that's when we decided to found the Triangle Funders in 1990. But I think activism can be approached in many ways. Some I think are more, and then some are less productive. And I think one of the things that we always try to do, that I've always tried to do, is not to be, although I might take hard-line positions on issues and positions that I would not apologize for, I always think it was very, very important to meet people where they were in that issue. And not try to like club them over the head with it, which is an unfortunately violent metaphor, but not force them or deride them. But if you see where they are, meet them there and then bring them forward with you. And I think that one of the things that we did at Triangle, and that I did in particular, was find the ways to do that very, very easily. And, you know, in the first couple of years at Triangle, we were in and on and around every kind of media possible, because it was obviously very important to be very much in the mainstream to have those things said and talked about. And we got great response. And so it was being totally out in the world with people who were not already on our side, but presenting the rational, clear, logical arguments for equality and dignity that eventually made sense to people. And that gets back to the whole thing of being out. And being out is so important because not only is it good for yourself and your own soul, but it's also very important because then the more people who are out, the less other people can rely on stereotypes or their other ideas of what gay people or who gay and lesbian people are. And so we've seen now with all this advance on these various issues that that's been very, very important. The idea that everybody now, or let me put it this way, I don't think anybody today can say that they don't know anybody who's gay. And it's funny because back in the early 90s, we would go to the Lansing various things. And inevitably, whoever we were meeting with, whatever state rep, they would say, "Oh, that's all interesting, and I support that, but you know, I don't even have gay people in my district." Can you imagine? And so it's like, over the years, no representative at any level of any place can with a so-called straight face tell you that they don't know any gay people in their district. So it's a combination of those things. It was a willingness to be totally out there, totally put a face to these issues in discussion, and making sure that we got into every kind of mainstream media so that we weren't just talking about this within the gay media amongst ourselves, which really doesn't really help very much. So, there.
Yeah, but a willingness to put yourself out there, especially at the time when you did, was a dangerous thing to do. Putting a face and a name to a movement that a lot of people still were wrestling with put you in great danger. As you said, you didn't have any allies in the police department. The political establishment was more than content to just pretend that this wasn't an issue. Where did you find friends that were sympathetic to what you were saying? Was it the media?
The media was critical, and at first and that was the process in itself, because at first, at that time, there really wasn't anyone in the community in the Metro Detroit level of Michigan who was really willing to go out there and do this every day, to be interviewed every day, to be on the radio, or be on television, whatever it was, because that's a pretty huge way of outing yourself, obviously. But also, it did bring in a lot of dangerous situations, because the more that I was being identified, people would see me who I had no idea who they were or what they knew. I often would be like in a lobby of a movie theater, for example, and somebody would come up to me and go, "Oh, I saw you on TV the other day. I really think you're doing great. Thank you, blah, blah, blah." And that was very nice. But then I thought to myself, well, for everybody in this lobby who would come up and say that to me, there are people in this lobby who would like to come up and punch me in the face. So, but that was really a huge part of it. Just like no compunction to not be out there every day. And that's what I made my job at for 17 years. It was being as out as I could be, as publicly as I could be, and making the same arguments for our positions.
Well, it's interesting to me, though, that you took that stance, because you and I grew up in the same community. We're both Grosse Pointers, and I graduated a little after you did. But I have to think that somewhere in the back of your mind was this notion. I mean, there are expectations for kids that graduate from that high school, and somebody in your family had done something significant to even get them into that community in the first place. So I wonder what sort of role that played in your willingness to take on a leadership position in this movement.
Well, after all, I was the student body president of my high school.
Did anyone know at the time?
No. But I don't know. I grew up in a household that was very activist already, politically and otherwise. So I grew up in a family tradition of making change for the better, and leaving a better place behind than where you came from. And I think that really is at the basis of it. Also, our family had always been pretty involved in various kinds of media and publicity and news gathering. So I had a real sense of what that was all about. So I knew how to work that. I'd been given the confidence and the belief in myself to do it. And I think maybe coming from a pretty comfortable community, I just felt naturally comfortable to be out there and talking about things that I believe to be true and about myself. It never occurred to me to approach the work in any other way.